It's official. Our government has absolutely no idea how to fix the housing crisis. Once again, they've managed to prove it. Hey guys, it's Scott here. Now, I woke up this morning to a slack of fresh rental market data. I want to share that rental market data with you. My research team has put it together for me, and it absolutely did blow my mind. Not just because the numbers are bad, but because at this point, you start asking bigger questions. How did we end up here? Because when you zoom out, this isn't happening everywhere else. Other countries have housing pressure, sure, but what we are dealing with here in Australia is on a whole nother level. And that's when you start wondering, what did we do to land ourselves in this mess? For renters, this is no longer a rough patch or a temporary squeeze. This seems like a permanent shift in living standards for Australians. And the most frustrating part is that this isn't some mystery problem. We actually know exactly why this is happening. We know what would help. But instead of fixing it, the government keeps floating ideas that risk making it even worse. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, Scott, every week it feels like another crisis video. And trust me, I feel that too. I don't enjoy opening the news and seeing the same doom and gloom you do. If the data ever gave me something positive to report, I'd be the first person on here talking about it. And today is no different. Cotality, one of the biggest housing data firms in the country, has just released new rental research showing rents have hit new extremes. Rents are now rising close to 3 times faster than wages. So just when you think affordability can't possibly get worse, it somehow does. And when you actually look at what's driving this, it's not complicated. It comes back to poor decisions, weak housing supply, and really bad policy settings that keep missing the mark. We've got policies designed for governments to win government, not actually fix the problem. Now, in this video, I'll break down the rental data in plain English. I will show you what rising interest rates are really doing to rents using new Ray White research, and I will explain why capital gains tax and negative gearing changes could end up punishing renters the most, even though hardly anyone will connect the dots here. I'm putting all of this together so you don't have to read 1,000 articles just to understand what's happening in your own country. And before we get into it, if you want property and the economy explained without spin, subscribe and hit the bell. I do these breakdowns every single day. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the data. Over the 5 years to September 2025, national rents have jumped 43.9%. Over that same period, wages rose just 17.5%. Rents have sprinted ahead while incomes have barely kept pace. That gap changes lives. It means pay rises don't feel like progress, they just disappear into rent. It means housing takes priority over everything else, and households are forced to cut back elsewhere. Cotality's figures show renters are now spending an average of 33.4% of their pre-tax income on rent. That's the highest level ever recorded. The long-run average is around 29%, and back in 2020, it dipped as low as 26%. In real terms, this means less flexibility, fewer choices, and far more forced compromises. Living further out, for example, accepting smaller or poorer quality homes, delaying plans, sharing when you really don't want to share your home. And for many Aussies, it means being one rent increase away from genuine financial stress. And this pressure is not easing. After a brief cooling period, rental growth has picked up again. National rents rose 5.4% in the year to January 2026, showing that even after years of brutal increases, the momentum hasn't broken. Western Australia is the clearest example. Rents there are up 66% in 5 years, while wages have risen just 18.5%. The ACT is the only market where rents and wages have broadly tracked together. Everywhere else, renters have been left behind. The underlying reason is simple. Vacancy rates remain extremely low, and new supply is nowhere near enough to meet population growth. That imbalance is giving landlords all of the advantages and all of the leverage. Let's be clear, it's a great time to be a landlord. This is where Ray White's research becomes critical because it highlights a reality many renters aren't being told clearly. ABS data shows housing costs are now one of the biggest drivers of inflation, and the problem is that interest rate hikes don't fix housing shortages. In fact, they can make rental conditions worse in the short term. Yes, the RBA lifts rates to slow inflation, but if inflation is being driven by housing costs, and those costs are being driven by a lack of supply, then rate hikes are a blunt tool. You're trying to solve a supply problem with a demand lever. Higher rates do not remove planning delays, they don't create more tradies, they don't lower regulatory costs or reduce the tax burden baked into the construction cost. What they do is raise financing costs and make housing projects harder to justify. They never get off the ground, they never get built. We've already seen how this plays out. During the last tightening cycle, investor lending did fall sharply. Analysis shows new investor loans dropped around 28% within a year of rates rising in 2022. Instead of easing rental pressure, rents surged. By May 2024, national rents were up more than 18%, with Perth seeing increases close to 30%. Let me ask you this question. Would that happen if we had thousands more homes built and constructed? No, it would not. Demand for rentals also did not disappear. People still needed somewhere to live, but fewer investors were buying and building. Fewer rentals were being added to the market, and the squeeze did intensify. So as we head into another period of higher rates, renters should not assume that that will bring them any relief. In fact, the opposite is true. In a market already starved of supply, it will absolutely do the opposite. I covered capital gains tax, CGT, and negative gearing in detail earlier this week. So if you want the full breakdown, check that video after this, link in the description. But here's what matters for renters right now. There's serious discussion about winding back CGT discount and ongoing noise around negative gearing. This is often framed as a debate between investors and first-home buyers, but renters are the ones who absorb all of the damage if this is mishandled. So if I look at some survey data, it actually found 35% of investors would sell if the CGT discount was cut to 25%. Another group has already sold properties due to tax concerns, and roughly half say they're considering selling within the next 2 years. In a balanced market, that might not be catastrophic. In today's market, it is dangerous. Escrim data shows the national vacancy rate sits around 1.2%, and Perth at 0.6%, Adelaide at 0.8%, and Hobart at 0.4%. Those are emergency level conditions. Every time an investor sells to an owner-occupier, a rental property disappears off the market. That's fewer homes available, more competition, and higher rents. Negative gearing will only compound this. If landlords lose the ability to absorb losses, rents won't fall, they will increase. And if tax settings become harsher overall, landlords will naturally try to offset that harshness against the renters through increased rent. This is why policy sequencing matters. If the government tightens investor tax settings without fixing supply first, renters don't win, they get squeezed harder. The solution here is to build more homes. But how many policies do you see about building more homes or incentivizing anyone anywhere to build these homes? This is the part nobody wants to hear, but it's where the data and the forecasts are lining up. 2026 is not shaping up to deliver meaningful rental relief. Housing supply is still falling short. New completions aren't keeping pace with population growth. Vacancy rates remain near record lows. Rental growth has already re-accelerated. Now layer on higher interest rates, which discourage new supply and reduce investor participation, add tax uncertainty, which makes investors extremely cautious, and landlords seeing all of this are already pricing in future risk by pushing rents higher today. When you put it together, higher rates, constrained supply, nervous investors, and tight vacancies all point in the same direction. The rental crisis is not easing, it is deepening. So this is where we're at. Rents have surged almost 3 times faster than wages, rental affordability is at record lows, vacancy rates remain near emergency levels, and the policy settings being discussed right now risk making the situation far worse, not better. If you are a renter hoping this is the worst that it will get, I generally wish I had better news for you. The data just doesn't support that. The real question is whether the government is actually trying to fix the housing crisis or unintentionally worsening it at every turn. Let me know what you're seeing where you live. Are rents still climbing? Are inspections getting more competitive? And if you want these breakdowns without the spin, subscribe and hit the bell. I'll keep walking you through the data, whether it's good news or bad.